Welcome to EDAR342 Introduction to Media Arts Lecture 1. So this recording supersedes the recording that was taken or that was done during the actual lecture at 8 o'clock this morning. So this particular recording has got more information on. So I'd like to start the lecture with acknowledgement of country. We respectfully acknowledge and pay our respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their nations, who are the traditional owners of the lands and seas wherever we gather in Australia. We continue to work together to build a respectful and reconciled country. So in this presentation, I would like to briefly step through what the media arts are and perhaps what the media arts are not. I would like to have a look at how the media arts are situated in the Victorian curriculum. Excuse a little spelling mistake there. In the Victorian curriculum. I'd like to unpack the basics, so elements and principles associated with media arts, remembering that the elements and principles of the visual arts and indeed of music, dance and drama, they still interweave with each other, but there are some that are specific to media arts. And then I'm going to give you some information about preparing for workshop number 1. So what are the media arts? Well, the media arts are really sort of a companion to the 4 other disciplines that we have in arts education. So the 5 disciplines being dance, drama, media arts, music, and visual arts. In the art world, media arts is concerned with the creation of artworks that use the affordances of technology. So by that I mean, technology or media such as film, such as convergence media, which is things like social media. It incorporates elements such as sound and text. Indeed, it even incorporates silence. So the key thing here is to start thinking about the differences between visual arts and media arts and how the two, or indeed, specifically in this unit, how media arts is still an art form, it is still a practice that is deeply entrenched within the art world. But what it is doing, it is very explicitly drawing upon technology to enable a certain form of art experience. It's really important to understand and remember that media artworks are an expression of something. So it's an expression of something from somebody to an audience. There is intent behind the creation of that artwork. Now, there is intent in much of what we do. There's intent in writing an essay. There's intent in walking down the street. There's an intent in going to the shop. But when you're considering artworks, there is the intent of the audience, the intent of the artist. So the artist has an intention, whether it's personal or whether it's more sort of something to be broadcast and to incorporate the audience. And so this is where we're making or noticing a difference between media arts and the creation of media artworks and the consideration of media artworks, as opposed to the consideration of media as an entity. So it's not a study of media, it's not a study of newspapers, it's not a study of the media world, it's not necessarily a study of the impact of media and its employees on the world. We are looking at the development of expression and artworks that are completely imbued with the media. Now, there are 2 really exciting Australian artists, Sean Gladwell and Jess McNeil, who are producing some really exciting media artworks at the moment. And when you watch them, you'll notice that they're really everyday. So these artists are telling a story. They're telling their story. They're telling something that is interesting to them, things that captivate them. So it may not be their life history. It may not be the story of their grandmother or something like that, but it's little snippets of their day-to-days, little snippets of their world that they capture on film, that they capture with audio, they capture with text, they edit these experiences that they capture into a new kind of artwork, into a new kind of experience. and then they publish them, and they publish them as artworks, so that the audience is able to engage with them. And when you look at their some, well, not all of it, but when you look at some of their art, you will see that it's it is really mundane. It is the everyday, but they turn it into something quite exciting. So on Leo, there are links to Sean Gladwell's work and to Jess McNeil's work, and I'd really encourage you to read it. To watch it, and there will be an opportunity for us to engage with it in the workshops as well. But they're really good examples of what media arts are. For those of you who are in the lecture this morning, I also showed you the artwork of the chicken sitting in the tree, with the synthesized sounds coming out of them. And we had a discussion about what is the intention behind that artwork, and what is the artist asking us to think. And this is a new field to many of you, and I'm not expecting sort of deep and intense thinking at this particular point in time, but I hope that you'll be able to reflect on that artwork and come up with ideas as to what the artist was wanting us to think. On a technical aspect, we were able to discuss how images have been spliced together, how the chicken had become the focus of the artwork by the background being grey and almost dead-like, and the chicken being really colourful. We also had a conversation about the synthesized voice rather than the normal sound that a chicken makes. It was very close to the normal sound, but it was definitely synthesized. So again, there's this integration of sound technologies. So I've put the link to the chicken video up on Leo as well, and I'd like you to revisit that and start thinking about what is the intent, what is the artist asking us to think about, what is the artist actually expressing, and also try and identify what makes these artworks media artworks. In fact, what makes them an artwork as opposed to print production or film production. There's a difference between film production and an artwork, and I'd like you to try and see if you can identify what those are. So where are the media arts? Where do we find them? So the manifestation of media artworks, of course, is inextricably linked with media forms such as film, television, print, the internet, and convergent media. So what artists do is they pull together all of these technologies and either use them individually, but more often than not use them in combination to make artworks. Convergent media being really sort of social media, and the ability for an amateur user to publish onto Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat, whatever it may be, and reach a really large audience with some kind of image or footage that has an intention and has something behind it that the audience needs to think about. Think to your own social media use and what you're doing when you're uploading to social media. What is it you want your Instagram audience to know about you, or how do you want them to react to the image that you put up there? So I don't think that anyone ever uploads an image to Facebook or Instagram without there being some kind of purpose. You don't just do it because you were bored one day. You do it because you want some kind of reaction. You want to incite some kind of communication and feedback from your audience, even if it's just that idea of being given a notification, and some sort of affirmation that what we put up there was of interest. But I think we all use social media or convergent media in a far more honed and what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of honed and mature and knowing way. So we're really quite clever with how we use those kind of media. The creation of media artworks is largely dependent on some kind of knowledge of software, especially editing packages such as Photoshop, GarageBand, iMovie, and PowerPoint. And part of EDAR342 and media arts in your assignment is to create a small film or movie it's a moving piece artwork, really, that is between 45 seconds and a minute long. And part of creating that will be a requirement to use these softwares. Now, part of what we do not do in the unit is go through explicitly how to use GarageBand, or something like that. So what you'll need to do is find software that you can use already, and of course there is support to help you with them. But there is an assumption there's a little bit of prior knowledge coming to the unit. As I said in the lecture this morning, I'd really like to think and focus on this idea of an artwork. Okay, so I want you to think about what it is to be a media artist, and what it is to create a media artwork, and that's what we're going to be looking at in terms of your assignment. So media arts in the curriculum. Obviously there is the Victorian curriculum that we use here in Melbourne, and when you go to the Victorian curriculum, there is a whole section on the media arts, and it explains to you what the media arts are and how they are enacted in the primary school setting. So I'd like you to go through and read these. The link is on week 1 in Leo for you to access. And I'd like you to think about what is the difference between media arts and what is the difference between visual arts, and how is that language changing, because it does change ever so subtly. What is less subtle and is more obvious is the actual sort of forms of output in terms of responding and making. So what are the media arts asking of students, and indeed what are they asking of us, of our teachers? You will, of course, all be very familiar with the 4 strands, because we saw these in visual arts and we saw these in music last semester. And just with visual arts and music and dance and drama, the media arts have the 4 interrelated strands. So we've got explore and represent ideas. We've got media arts practices, we've got present and perform, and we've got respond and interpret. And again, I expect that you'll come into this unit with a certain level of expertise in these strands. I know that they were difficult to process and they were difficult to understand, but looking at them a second time, they will of course be easier. But it does mean that you need to go into them and start looking at them and unpacking exactly what they're asking of you and how they're different from the visual arts. A key difference is going to be this use of technology and how technology allows you to create artworks that include sound and movement and text. Continue to go through the Victoria curriculum and explore what they're doing. We still see artist as student as artist and audience, and also student as artist who is learning through making and responding, and the audience who's learning through making and responding. So the Victorian curriculum is the one that we're using. We're going to be looking explicitly at those strands again to understand what the media arts do. Just as a point of interest, currently in New South Wales, they don't use media arts as a standalone discipline. So in New South Wales, they perceive of arts education as being dance and drama, music and visual arts. So even within Australia, there's a disparity about what students are studying and also how we understand them. And I think the take home from this is that in Victoria, media arts has a really significant position within education. So it is important for many different reasons for us to engage with it as an art form. By engaging with it as an art form, we are learning how to use technologies. We're learning how to express ourselves and present those expressions to audiences using media technologies. It's drawing upon existing skills we have in media and using those to be artists. So not using them to be media technologists, but using them to be artists. So how can we begin to understand what the media arts are? You'll remember that in EDAR342 we use the conceptual framework, and the conceptual framework being this document. And the key to this document are the relationships between these 4 main concepts of subject matter, artist, audience, and artwork. And what the conceptual framework does is it offers you these sort of guiding questions to ask and determine what we're looking at. On the right hand side here under these 4 elements, I think you'll probably see that those you could apply those really easily to the media arts, certainly those questions. If we were to start thinking in media arts less of artist, artwork, subject and audience, and begin to think about producer, media, message and audience, and then apply that language to how we understand this conceptual framework. So replace subject matter with media, with message, replace artwork with media, and so on, artist with producer. Now, that's not to say that it's a sort of regimented, whole-scale change to that language, but it's just a different way of being able to think about what media artists do. Okay, so they are definitely still artists, but it's perhaps thinking about them as being able to produce their art from from a confluence of different kind of technologies, and they understand those technologies and what the technologies can do for them excuse me, to actually create a new kind of artwork. But you could still use the language of subject matter, artwork, artist and audience to actually produce to think about media artworks. The Roy Baker and Hamilton reading, which I didn't realize, but you can't access because it's attached to another unit. So I've got some printouts in the studio for you. The Roy Baker and Hamilton reading has a really great explanation about this producer, media, message, and audience, and you'll be using that in workshop 1. So revisit the conceptual framework and think about how the media arts concepts fit in with this and what the relationships are, and then begin to apply those concepts to these guiding questions. So what is the relationship between the producer and the media? So how did the producer make this particular bit of media art? So what did they have to do? Was it painting? Was it printmaking? Probably not. In fact, what it was editing some footage or splicing together photographs, taking the photographs to provide them with a sort of a collage of images to work with. What were they doing in terms of audio? Were they recording somebody talking? Were they recording music? Or were they creating new sounds, as in the chicken video that we saw this morning with the synthesized voice? So I hope you can see that the media arts is new. It is different from visual arts, but it's certainly really interconnected. So if you were able to work well with the conceptual framework in last semester, you'll be able to work well with the media arts and the work that you'll be doing in this particular semester. Now, the media arts are also underpinned by elements and principles, and just as any of the art subjects are. And some of them, I'm going to go through some of them now, or just list them for you. And you're going to be looking at these in workshop 1. You're going to be researching them in workshop 1. I do just want to add that the elements and principles of media are not replacing the original principles, and nor are they completely clarified and confirmed. And even across the 2 different the 2 different readings that we have. So the Dinham reading. Let me just show you. So we've got the Cortex 1B and Cortex 1C. So the Dinham reading and the Roy Baker and Hamilton reading have slightly different language that they're using, and it's not that one is right and one is wrong. It's just you need to be a little bit fluid and agile in how you use them and make a decision about which one you do want to use. But some of those elements that appear in media arts include light. So does the artwork include the use of light? How does the media artist use light to affect some kind of sensation in the audience? Similarly with sound. I go back to the chicken video that we had a look at this morning. The sound was slightly uncomfortable, wasn't it? Because there was a chicken with a synthesized voice coming out of its beak. Didn't sound quite right. There was a jarring. It was slightly unusual. And you'll remember that I mentioned the work of Patricia Piccinini at that point, where there's this idea of sort of hybridization, which I'll come on to in a moment. Time is incredibly important. So how does the element of time work within media artworks? And your assignment task is actually to create, or a small part of it, a really small part of it, is to create a really small media artwork where time is essential because it's between 45 seconds and a minute long. How you choose to develop time is up to you. You know, are you going to take a whole range of concepts and of sort of time, understandings of time, and condense it into 45 seconds? Or are you just going to be concerned with a 45-second point in time? Point of view, which sometimes appears as an element, sometimes appears as a principle. You know, point of view is like the angle shot. Are we looking down on the person? Are we looking up at the person? Are they in the distance? Are they nearby? Is it a close-up shot? You know, a close-up shot, there's an example in one of the readings, a close-up shot of a flower is going to tell you a lot less information in a way than a long-distance shot of that flower, because the long-distance shot, you might be able to identify the flower itself, you'll be able to see where it is, see how tall it is, what color it is, all those kind of things. The close-up, if it literally was just part of a petal or something, gives you a lot less broader information. We've also got performance, we've got framing, we've got narrative, and we've got editing. I would think that my suggestion is that this idea of editing is going to be very important. Editing and manipulating different things, different aspects, photographs, image, text, that kind of stuff, to create an artwork. And the main component of your assignment task is to design 2 lessons that go across the 4 strands and incorporate the media arts. So you want to be giving yourself something that is of interest. So that idea of a narrative and how you edit that together to make it really interesting. Principles of media arts. You'll see point of view appears here, also appears in here. So a lot of media arts are interactive. You know, how is the audience invited to engage with it? What happens when the audience does engage with that media artwork? Does it change? Do the lights change? Do the sounds change? Heterogeneity as well. So, you know, how an artwork has lots of different components that come together as one. So it's not just homogeneous. And this is where you're thinking about the editing together of lots of different parts of the media arts world. So it can be sound, it can be very sort of spatial. So, you know, how are you using space to make the audience members interact with video footage or different kind of screens that you're putting your artwork on? Hybridization, I think, is really exciting. And hybridization is again about the manipulation and the editing. How you bringing together different ideas and components to create something new, to create something that perhaps does not exist in reality. The medium is fairly self-explanatory, and we'll be going through some of those that you can use in media arts. Temporality and duration is very closely connected to the element of time. But how is time affecting the audience? So remember that almost any artwork, and certainly the artworks that we're concerned about, are about an expression. Okay, the expression of an artist or a group of artists. They're expressing about something. And so how would they be using time to help that kind of expression? And the point of view we've already spoken about in the elements, but again, you know, it's going to be either conceptual or physical. So it can be you know, how the artist is thinking, what their viewpoint is, what their social viewpoint is, and then it's also about the way you're manipulating technology to give your audience a particular physical viewpoint of something or from something. In workshop 1, so I'd like you to come prepared for workshop 1 so that we're all ready to go. I'd like you to bring a Wi-Fi enabled device, preferably a laptop or a tablet, and preferably with some kind of software that allows you to create a document that you can publish. So PowerPoint or Keynote, Acrobat, Xmind, mind mapping, anything like that. In pairs, you're going to develop a media arts conceptual framework, and it's going to be based on this one. So it's going to be based on the framework we used for the visual arts, and you're going to create one for the media arts. So working in pairs, you are going to research what the media arts are and what the language of the media arts is. So you research the language, the codes, the conventions, and the processes of media arts using Dinham and using Roy Baker and Hamilton. And you are going to integrate those together into the structure of the visual arts, into the structure of the visual arts conceptual framework, but obviously for the media arts. And in particular, you're going to be looking at the concepts that are how they're in relationship together, okay? And what is the kind of language you need to put into this section here, to make it applicable to the media arts. So remember that the conceptual framework is designed to help you think about the visual arts and think about the relationships between those concepts. You are creating one that is for the media arts. You're then going to apply your media arts conceptual framework to the investigation of a media artist and or a media artwork. And there'll be a list of media artists and or media artworks provided for you to choose from. So you are creating a media arts conceptual framework, and then you're applying it. Okay, and the idea is that you're taking your framework and you're applying it to investigate an artist or a media artist or a media artwork and learn more about it. It's fairly obvious and evident and completely natural that media artworks are still going to be new for many of us. So this is a way of us investigating about them. You're then going to document your media arts conceptual framework design and your analysis of an artist or an artwork. And you're going to publish that onto a blog, which I will have the address for by the time you start your workshop. I just need to find a proper software that will really let us do that. So you're actually publishing what you've created, and of course, when you're publishing something, you want somebody to read it, you want somebody to engage with it, and you want somebody hopefully to learn from it. So please make sure you bring a Wi-Fi enabled device. It'll be better to have a laptop or a tablet rather than your iPhone. You will be working in pairs, so it's going to be very much a sort of student-led, student-guided workshop. And your tutors will come around and help you with it and help you to decipher some of that language and to sort of co-decipher some of the language, because the codes and conventions of media arts are large and varied, and depending on what you're reading, they have slightly different takes. But the underlying premise of this is to develop a document that will help you in your learning over the next 6 weeks, and also help you when you're out in school. So it's great to be working with you again. Thank you to those who were at the lecture this morning. This is a more sort of concise and informed version of that. Remember that there are a couple of videos that I've mentioned in this presentation, and the links will be up on Leo, and I'd like you to watch those and then revisit what I've said about them and actually get thinking about them and think about how your media arts conceptual framework allows you to unpack them and understand them, and how that framework would allow children in a classroom to understand them, unpack them, and start to develop their own artwork.